Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, there's singing in the streets as South Africans welcome the lifting of a liquor ban as the country moves into phase 3 of lockdown and eases some coronavirus restrictions. Also in Nigeria, teen students race to prepare for key exams which should have been taking place between May and June. The West African Senior School Certificate examinations were delayed, of course, because of the pandemic. And the continent's economy has taken a mammoth hit because of efforts to slow down the spread of COVID-19. We take a closer look at some of the businesses, big and small, struggling to do what they can to keep afloat. But first, after more than 2 months of shutdown, South Africa eased its coronavirus restrictions on Monday. Moving into level 3 lockdown means that millions of people are due back at work this week, and places of worship are allowed to reopen with limits on the size of congregations. The relaxation of the rules come even as the country is bracing for a rise in the number of COVID-19 cases. But despite the risks, the economic pressures of the lockdown have been unsustainable. MC Ferreira brings us more from Cape Town.
After more than 2 months, more than 8 million South Africans returned to work today, but it certainly wasn't business as usual. The most extraordinary safety precautions are in place to prevent workplace transmission. The country finds itself in the extraordinary position of reopening the economy while we're still weeks and possibly months away from a peak of COVID-19 infections. Quite simply, the government's hand was forced by the poor state of the economy. We heard last week that half of South Africans now face food insecurity, so there was simply no delay possible any longer. There's great relief too for companies who found themselves in dire straits after 10 weeks with their doors shut. They've had about a week to put in place safety measures, and if one listens to the Labour Minister, many are simply not ready. This also applies to the country's schools. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has conceded that there simply hasn't been enough time and enough material available to keep teachers and pupils safe for now, so she's delayed the opening by at least 1 week. The exception here is the Western Cape province that today sent about 90,000 grade 7 and grade 12 pupils back to school. Ironically, this province is also home to about 2/3 of the country's COVID-19 cases, but it was also the province that clamoured loudest for the economy to reopen because of the damage inflicted by the lockdown. So it's really a balancing act here now of trying to prevent workplace transmission while at the same time trying to keep as many people employed as possible.
Well, perhaps the most deeply welcome aspect of this week's changes in South Africa is the lifting of an alcohol ban. People woke up at dawn to queue to restock. Have a listen to the beautifully full-throated celebration of crowds at one store in Johannesburg. Well, the 9-week ban was brought in to ease up pressure on emergency services, who've reported a steep drop in alcohol-related accidents and fighting. Nicola Schumann tells us more.
Long queues like this one were a common sight in front of liquor stores across South Africa on Monday morning. For 9 weeks, alcohol had been banned in the country. The aim was to ease pressure on emergency wards and prevent a spike in domestic violence during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many customers were very relieved on Monday.
I've been waiting for this day for like an entire whole month, and I'm excited that it's actually done. I had to wake up super early to be here, so I'm all good now.
During the ban, some South Africans were able to buy alcohol on the black market.
Yes, that one was very traumatizing, whereby people had to buy liquor illegally, and the range price is so high in order for us to be unable to purchase. So this is a very good idea for the government to open for us.
Under the new measures, alcohol can only be sold from Monday to Thursday between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. The government has warned that if the rates of infection of the coronavirus surge in certain areas, stricter rules will be imposed regarding the sale of alcohol. The country has recorded more than 34,000 cases of coronavirus, a record on the continent. Health experts believe the outbreak in South Africa could peak in August or September.
Well, Cameroon's reopened schools and universities. The country was the first in Central Africa to register a case of coronavirus. And with over 6,100 cases and 197 deaths on Monday, it is one of the worst affected countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Parents and teaching unions have warned that it's too early to ease measures that were already under fire for being too lax. No lockdown was ever introduced, and entertainment venues and restaurants were allowed to reopen in the evenings at the end of April. Tanzanian university students are also back in class. Campuses reopened for the first time since mid-March on Monday. President John Magufuli's downplayed the risks of the epidemic in the country. His opposition and human rights campaigners have accused his government of hiding information. In Nigeria, teen students are racing to prepare for key exams which should have taken place between May and June. The West African senior school certificate examinations were delayed because of the pandemic. Our correspondents tell us more.
Hello students, good morning to you all. This is Mr. Kelani. You are in Grade A Genesis Academy.
This mathematics teacher is talking to his students, preparing them for the West African Senior School Certificate Examination. Just like many of his counterparts, they produce videos which they broadcast through WhatsApp. Teaching without seeing the faces of their students has been a challenge for the average teacher for the over past 2 months.
In the class, I call the name of the student. Taiwo, you are not getting it right. Sunday, you are not concentrating. But no, I don't know what they are actually going through at home. And I don't feel real comfortable. But hopefully, I know they are getting it based on the feedback I do get in their exercises, their set work, and their assignments. I feel lonely.
Timileyin dreams of resuming his normal classes. His family and himself have gone without electricity for some weeks during the Lagos lockdown due to COVID-19. This is a difficult situation to live in, especially because this adolescent is in the midst of revising for the WASC. But these challenges have taught him to be more autonomous.
So I was reading continuously. So then I postponed it again for another 2 weeks. I got tired of the reading, everything. Then another 2 weeks, then my parents now suggested that I should continue, that I should not give up. So in case that they call off the lockdown anytime, any day, so I will be fully well prepared.
To prevent school children from dropping out, states like Lagos broadcast special programs, productions which are rebroadcast by local televisions and radio stations. The contents of the programs are approved by WAEC, the private coordinating institute since 1952 of the examination certificate common to the 5 English-speaking states of the West African region. Despite the disruption tied to COVID-19, WAEC reassures that all students will have equal opportunity to pass the WASC 2020 edition.
We'll give them time to prepare and then write the exam. We'll make sure that everybody is on equal footing. You know, there's a level playing ground for all candidates to sit for the exam.
As one of the millions of candidates of the English-speaking West African states, Timileyin keeps reading and revising, impatiently waiting for the new date of the 2020 WASC.
Harare summoned the US ambassador to clarify comments made by Washington's national security advisor. Over the weekend, Robert O'Brien named Zimbabwe as an adversary, allegedly using social media to ramp up tensions surrounding US protests over the death of George Floyd, a black man who died after a policeman knelt on his neck. Zimbabwe has strongly denied the claims. DR Congo has confirmed it is dealing with a second Ebola outbreak. It adds another health crisis as the country tries to tackle COVID-19 and a measles epidemic. DR Congo has been trying to officially end an Ebola outbreak in the east of the country, where at least 2,243 people have died since August 2018. 6 more cases, including 4 deaths, have now been identified in the north of the country near Bandaka. Like elsewhere in the world, the continent's economy has taken a mammoth hit because of efforts to slow down the spread of COVID-19. Businesses big and small are struggling to do what they can to keep afloat. Take a look.
To say that the coronavirus has thrown life up in the air is a serious understatement. But it's particularly pertinent for the small Senegalese airline Transair. Founded 10 years ago, the company has flown through the many challenges of launching an airline in Africa, where regulations often strangle opportunities and national flagship carriers dominate. The coronavirus has only added more turbulence to the situation. But Transair isn't giving up. Even though it currently has 0 passengers, as Senegal has suspended all flights until June 30th, every week a Transair plane makes a trip, completely empty. This way the airplane's machines stay clean and the pilots get practice. And the company fulfills the required minimum flights to retain its licence.
When you need to make a commercial flight, if you're rusty, inevitably flight safety can be affected. So it's good to keep flying regularly.
An airplane is a machine that is designed to work. If the plane doesn't fly, the machine doesn't work. And when you restart late, if a minimum of maintenance is not done, you can have a lot of problems.
Businesses elsewhere have also had to find solutions to new challenges. In the case of South African game farmers, what to do with surplus meat. These anonymous farmers are donating the meat from culling to poor communities in the area. Harsh restrictions have hampered thousands of South Africans from working and earning a living.
We cannot have access to what we have, and then just around the corner, people, through no fault of their own, are going hungry. So it's actually an easy decision. It's the right thing to do.
Tanzania, meanwhile, has reopened beaches, bars and restaurants after President John Magufuli said coronavirus cases are declining in hospitals.
The government has announced people still need to take precautions since the coronavirus still exists. We have also been taking precautions here to protect our staff and our customers, and this is by making sure all relevant measures are followed.
The country hasn't published virus figures for several weeks now.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.